Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the live broadcast for the Festival of Enterprise Bounce Back webinars. Today, we're joined with the wonderful Andy Bone and Jason Crawford from Dell Technologies, both solution specialists. And today, they're going to be talking to us about how to work faster and smarter with some of Dell's technologies. So they'll be going through some of the products and services that Dell offer and digging deep into some of your questions that you may have. So if you've got any questions about any of the Dell products, any services that Dell may offer, these are your guys that are going to answer all those questions for you. So make sure you've got plenty of questions. I'm going to hand over to the guys now to sort of go through their presentation at first. But if you want to send over any questions, please do add them in the chat function or in the ask a question box. Right, over to you guys. Thank you.
Cheers, thanks a lot, Kazim. Welcome everybody. I'm saying welcome to all these people. Lutterworth, Birmingham, Barnsley. Wow, we're really going right across. Yeah, it's your hometown, Andy. I think you deserve to have done the shout out to Barnsley actually for Adrian there. We're in a very weird situation. I think we all know that. For those of you that joined last week, we were looking at a lot of the technologies that we provide to be able to get everyone back in the go, the more standard products. Today, we're going to be talking about working faster and smarter with some of our high-end products, some of the systems that are for us that work with specialist tools. In fact, at the moment, Andy and I are both using one of these specialist tools, the same one, but in different locations. I'm in Glasgow, and Andy is in
Lincoln.
He's trying to remember there.
I'm definitely in Lincoln. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're in this virtual world that we're able to share together that looks like we might be in the same place at the same office, just like Kasim had in the background there. He's trapped in his office. So trying to decorate it up like this is something of a bit of a challenge for us because we're very face-to-face people. We'd rather be talking to you, having lots of questions and a lot of interactions. And that's what this is about. It's about your time, and we appreciate the time that you're giving us today. So feel free to ask anything you want. It doesn't have to be quite related to the subject. We can go off beat, but really the priority is about trying to work out the tools that will help you perform better as a small business and organization.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've been sort of talking about in all our webinars in the recent weeks. It's about productivity, and in fact we've come to the conclusion that technology is another hire within the organization, and if you don't get the right hire, your productivity and your organization isn't going to benefit to the best of its ability. So that's where we've been going for the last few webinars, and what we want to do now is we want to expand on that and show you some different routes in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop a couple of slides up to explain what we're going to talk about today. And it's all about working faster and smarter. So how do we do that, Mr. Crawford? This is the key thing, because we'd all like to get from A to B as quick as possible, because that's obviously going to save us some resource and time. And there are a few ways that we've come up with, because I think last week we explained that devices, as they stand now, can only go so much thinner and lighter. So what can you actually do with a device? And what we've done across the portfolio, we've been working especially in the range that we're going to talk about a little bit today, with something called an optimizer tool to optimize different applications and processes within our devices, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail about that and how that works, which is quite cool. But ultimately, you guys, whether you're a one-man business, whether you've got 50, 100 seats in your organizations, what you need to know and what would benefit you is how we can provide services and products that will enable you and your workforce to actually be more productive. So let's have a look at a standard sort of workflow. I'm going to look at the left-hand side. Now, the left-hand side of this particular graphic here is all about our day-to-day activities. So our productivity suites are our Office 365, which I believe Dale from Microsoft has gone through really thoroughly with you guys. If you watched that presentation yesterday, I believe it was. Oh, sorry, Monday. Or there are other there are other options as well, like the G Suite in there as well. So your productivity suites, the general day-to-day tasks that we actually use on our devices. We then probably got some kind of CRM or some sort of customer service portal, which would be our Salesforce or equivalent. These are just examples that some of the top performing softwares out there. Again, once we've got that, we may be then looking at our storage platforms. Dropbox, just an example there, and obviously very poignant in today's marketplace is our communications and how we communicate from one organization to another, between each of our individual employees, and likewise. So again, Zoom. I mean, can you remember the numbers on Zoom at the minute, Jason?
You love stats and numbers.
I do
I'm not
love
the
stats,
numbers
yes.
guy, but
Yeah.
I know that basically, if I spoke to a few people inside Dell that invest in share opportunities, all they said is they wish they had bought more. It's Zoom has become the boom. I really had never heard of it. Honestly, hadn't heard of it back in February. And by the end of March, it was the only tool that we were using.
And I suppose that brings us back to sort of that digital transformation. Actually, we do talk about that quite a bit as well, don't we, Jason? It's like there are different organizations, different types of businesses that have made digital transformation and created this amazing new business model, like the Zoom communications. Another good one is Uber. I mean, who'd have thought 10 years ago? It's like, who'd have thought we could track our taxi and book a taxi online? No, it's always a phone call. So it's this digital transformation that a lot of organizations have made that have made them very successful, and the list is growing quite significantly. I think the actual figures, because yes, I do like a figure or two. They reckon there will be a 20% reduction in the FTSE, in the top 100 index, in the next 20 years, as in those organizations will have to either disappear or fully change in a digital transformation workspace. So it is quite a reality that digital transformation does benefit especially new organizations, because you can start from fresh, start with the ground running, use your own ideas. Last one on there is like accounting software or process software. So all these applications, day-to-day applications, we can run these on our standard devices, if you like. We don't need any particular power or performance, so we don't need to worry too much about what our devices are capable of. However, we did introduce last week something called Dell Optimizer. Now, Dell Optimizer has got 4 pillars. Now, the 4 pillars benefit organizations and individuals in the fact that what it does increases productivity and workflow. Now, how it does that, we'll have a quick look at it. In fact,
I think we'll look at it in a second or two, but not quite yet. I would like to see some stuff, because I know he's on a freight train this morning. And you're absolutely right, though, Andy. Looking at it, we're talking to everyone here who's in small business. Feel free to pop in the chat what you do. That's okay, because we'd be interested to try and tailor this to suit you, because every small business has its own way of working. And as we've seen through the COVID-19 scenario, we have seen a lot of growth actually in small business. And I know that sounds strange, because it's been a challenge for some, and some of them have taken opportunity very quickly. Because what I say with small business is it's about agility. It's about the being able to change quickly. Even to an extent, actually, Andy and I were kind of agile. We work as our own entity within the Dell community, and we had to change from being face-to-face events, obviously at the Festival of Enterprise and all the events that we do, to actually start doing this in this format. Obviously, we'd rather come up and interact with you and have all your questions directly and have maybe half an hour to chat on a stand, but that's not going to happen. So how did we actually overcome this? We overcame it with tools, and some of the tools that we use are very specialist. So what you'll find is organizations that have transitioned from, one of my friends, he runs a pop-up little shop, craft beer place. So his place had to transition to, how do I deliver to our customers? How do I make sure that I'm promoting what I do? And how do I work with that? It takes some specialist tools to create graphics. It takes some specialist tools to create a better website, also to make his broadcast videos. So I chatted to him and I was able to talk him through some of the technologies that would help to get him where he was going. Another friend of mine, actually based again, I think he's actually Birmingham based. He used to be, but he actually creates Lego minifigures. And he started off as custom designed painted minifigures. And then he went to actually creating a full scale operation. He now has 10 employees and he basically creates these minifigs as a custom order, 3D prints some parts for the specialist parts, and also prints onto the figures. Again, this takes the right tools in your hand. So Andy talked about the left-hand side. I'll talk just briefly about the right-hand side. Some of you may be familiar with these pieces of software. We're talking about Adobe. We're talking about Autodesk. Also as well, SolidWorks. That's also part of the creation, the 3D printing piece. You're creating parts and components, or you may be working with the media and softwares like Avid, etc. All of these different pieces do have their own requirements, and that's, I think, where it comes importantly into the piece there. Excellent. So just in from Barnsley there, just reading there, run a business centre for 100 business tenants, mainly micro businesses. So you have a lot of people in your situation that are coming, and they will be all businesses that are working on necessarily different platforms. And again, today we'll talk about those ones that are maybe in the specialist sort of section. So that's where I wanted to go with that. The reason we'll bring it back to the Dell Optimizer, because it's a piece of software that has been certified by all of these organizations to help those applications run better, smarter, and faster on our systems. So if you flick over to that, Andy, we'll have a little bit of a look. Oh, what do all these words mean? Oh, it looks like a marketing site.
It probably is marketing. We don't want to get too technical at all, do we? It's this actually spans from our workstation, our precision workstation development and research. So it's coming now into our mainstream and performance laptops as well. So we have, I say, with the 4 pillars, and I think we always say it's about the express response is the first one. So all those different applications that you are using on your day-to-day basis, the express response basically enables the system to use an AI capability, and it will then run those applications to the best of their ability. It will also learn how you use those applications so that it will keep them at the forefront of your system. So they will always be on and ready, so that when you click the Excel button, for example, or open an Excel file, it will be pretty instantaneous, that result, when you're looking at those. So the basic day-to-day stuff, it will actually enhance that experience in a great way to give you instant on availability of all those applications that you use in a day-to-day basis. And as I say, that's all driven by the AI.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I guess a lot of us are also working at home and realize that we're stuck with neighbors with power tools and stuff like that. And that's where the next piece in the puzzle comes, is our intelligent audio. It's able to actually focus in on your voice, not the birds in the background, not the neighbor with the power tools. And I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today without pieces of software like that, because my wife is now working from home at the moment as well. And she's literally a couple of meters ahead of the screen just in front of me. But she's in a conversation just now. And luckily, I hope, no, we can't hear her at the moment. So that's working well for me. So it's a little bit of extra in there as well. We worry about power as well, don't we, Andy? What do we do?
I'm gonna say we do. You always pick me up slightly, because I actually have a shed in the garden, and I'm always accused of having lots of pigeons in the background. So
I can't hear them. I can't hear them today.
Have a bit of quiet. Any pigeons?
No.
So
we're
again, right. these technologies are all working to benefit us and to create that great environment. So yeah, the next one is the charge there. Now, if we're out and about, which we're not really at the moment, most of us aren't, what happens is we have a battery which limits our usability, if you like, because once we've depleted the battery, we've depleted the source of our work, if you like. So our batteries now can go up to 30 hours on our latest devices, and we can actually express charge those back to 35% in 20 minutes and 80% in an hour. So it's great technologies, just these little things. It's all about adding little things to create a seamless end picture of productivity. Also with the express charge, it actually monitors what you're doing, so it will shut things down if you're not using them. So if the ambient air, lighting is for example quite dim, it will reduce the screen brightnesses. If you're not using high performance applications, it will take the processor power down, it will throttle it down, so it will just keep saving. It's like a very fine-tuned Formula One car. It will just keep saving that power until you need it the most. So yeah, that's the express charge.
To be fair, I think that happened yesterday. I kicked Lindsay out of the room. We were recording some videos yesterday for some presentations, and I kicked her out. And eventually, the laptop did die. But again, to get her back going again, it was very quick. It didn't take enough. Over that 35% was all she needed to go for the rest of the day, really. So getting that quick 20 minutes was just enough to be able to come back in, so I could get back to work as well, which was a nice thing.
Yeah, so it gives you that opportunity to be able to get up and go out. If you wanted to go and sit on a bench or something, get some fresh air, go and continue working out there. It gives you that usability available to you there. And finally, obviously, Jace, is the Express sign. My favorite, I think, is the Express sign.
It's your favorite, so go on, tell us about it, since it's your favorite.
It's my so I as I say, my shed's down the garden. I walk to my office in the morning. I take a few steps to my office in the morning. Yeah, sorry, it sounded very posh down the garden, down the landscape garden. No, just a few steps down the garden there. And as soon as I get near to the device, it will wake up, and as soon as I sit down in front of it, it recognizes me. It's like it says hello sort of thing, because it uses the Windows Hello technology, and it's the camera will recognize me and log me straight in, and lo and behold, I am exactly where I left off the day before. So,
do you know what? You didn't even tell us about the tree house that's in between, going all the way down to the garden shed. I have visited, Andy, and I've been to Lincoln, and I am very jealous. It's a very nicely finished garden.
Well, thank you very much for that, Mr. Crawford. Okay, should we continue?
Yeah, we'll press
journey?
on. Yeah, we've got another 10 minutes or so to chat to people when we get some questions in.
Okay,
yeah, what is it about for us? We are, here comes, push the tin. We are an equipment company that does provide. There are many others within there. But what really makes a workstation is that certification piece. Is about it works with all those high-end pieces of software. So not just the Dell Optimizer, but the system itself has a tick in the box to say, brilliant, we work with it. And why does that matter, Andy? What problems can happen when you're using a piece of software? I mean, we know this all too well. For anyone that joined last week, we had some challenges here and there. What are the kind of challenges you can face?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if I don't know if any of you guys are designers or engineers, or we've got any creatives in the meeting today, but you do require bespoke software, and that bespoke software is not cheap. In fact, some of the broadcast software available in the market is over $1 million for perpetual licensing. So it is, it's probably a bit out of our scope, but it's quite easy to have an engineer, a sole trading engineer consultant that has a license for design and engineering software that would probably cost in the region of £4,000 to £5,000 a year.
Scary.
So if that doesn't work, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to phone the software people up, and he's going to say, my software is not working, it's not very good. However, if you haven't got a machine that is certified to run that software, the software company will say, oh, well, until you get a machine that we know that runs that software, we can't really help you, because we've tested our software on these certified devices, and that's where it starts, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the hardest parts, is that conversation. Now, I used to actually be a support agent in Dell, and quite often what I would do with a customer is actually bring the software provider onto the call with us to try and resolve any problems that were happening, because it's quite easy to either blame a system or blame the software company. This happens on both sides. So one of the things that I had the advantage of, and we're talking about 15 years ago, this is still a thing that goes on today, is that co-relationship with the software vendors and providers, being able to give them a call, dial them in, so we can talk through a problem. Now, if my customer at the time, and I was working through the problem, didn't have that right device in hand, the call would slowly be very quickly pushed on to myself, and that would make my might be a little bit harder as well, because it's just like, well, why did I buy this? And you know what? We all do it. We're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of walking into the shop and going, that looks shiny, that looks lovely, but what does it do for me? We look at numbers, we look at Intel i7 and iCore, and then we look at Windows and we go, it's all too much sometimes. So what's the best way to do it? Well, the best way is to work with someone to understand what are the right things to be in hand. And you know what? That certification piece from these different providers is the important part. Now, when we go to pick the devices, there's some nice shiny stuff here. They all look very similar, Andy, don't they?
That's because it is exactly the same machine. It's our brand new 5750 Precision, and it's predominantly the power and performance end of our industry has been brick-like functional devices. In fact, right up to large towers that whir away under desks. And you know, if you're an organization that maybe is scaling out to 4 or 5 different users, you might even have a back-end system in a cupboard, in a hot cupboard, providing a real power scenario for your users.
And you know what, that looks kind of similar to something else I've seen, Andy, actually, because I'm looking at it, I was just like, you're telling me that that's a workstation, because that looks like a regular laptop to me in a lot of ways. In fact, I think we do some products called XPS, and they kind of look like that. So I'm going to call you out on it just because I like doing that now and again, but it looks pretty much the same.
Yeah, so for the last 5-6 years, we've had a product in the mix called the XPS, and it sits on the consumer market. Very briefly, what happened was people were going into John Lewis, Curry's, PC World, other retailers, and they were seeing this really lovely shiny device called an XPS, and they wanted it for their workplaces. It wasn't workplace compatible as such because it didn't have certain security features on, so we corrected that. And then we sort of created a business version of it. However, we've now moved to our Latitude 9000 series to take it again, to give you a better business class laptop that has that shine and that look. So what actually happens with the Precision here is we've taken that consumer XPS and we've packed it full of high-end and performance technology. Amazingly, I really don't know how they do it, because there's so much or so little space in there. In fact, we're down to, I think, 13 mil is the thickest point of this device, and it sits on a 15-inch footprint. Although it's how big is it, James?
So what you're saying is, side by side, I'm going to bring you back in this.
Oh, okay.
It's side by side. If I go in and buy one of these rather than the other, they're not the same thing, though they look identical on the outside. Just to make it simple for me, because I'm a little bit, special.
Absolutely, they're not the same. They look the same, they feel the same. And I think we did this last week. We showed 2 laptops. Laptops do look the same and do feel the same.
So I will be geeky on some of the tech, because Andy's saying there's some things that are very important in here. When we're talking about tower workstations and rack ones that are also in a Precision range as well, this has started to receive that kind of high-end core to it. And when we talk about the core, we talk about the processor. It can use Xeon processors, which are traditionally were only reserved for towers. And for those of you that are a bit geeky in the chat, feel free you can tell us all about that. But basically, it works in conjunction with error-correcting memory. It's a higher-end processor, and it means that those applications can run smarter again and faster on that kind of core. Being able to squeeze that in has been a hard job, because what we needed to do was add in extra cooling to the device, one fan to cool the graphics card and one fan to cool the processor as well. Oh, that's an incoming support call, Andy.
Yes, very well.
Certainly. So yeah, that is. We don't need to labor products too hard, but the thing is, it's trying to show you not everything is the same. It's not like for like. A workstation is the route if you are that kind of specialist user as well.
Okay, so yeah, this is as I say, it's our Precision 5750, and it's a 17-inch screen. So it's the first time we've introduced a 17-inch screen into this portfolio as well, Mr. Crawford, to give you a bigger real estate. Now again, That just enables people to have more real estate to work on in an amazing 4K display as well on that one.
It sounds kind of expensive though to me, Andy, because I'm not able to just rush out and get something like this. It sounds like it's going to be a bit of a challenge. Is there any way we can make that easier for anyone?
It is. And when we're talking about performance products, it's obviously something that isn't an impulse buy. It's something that is a considered purchase, but it will pay for itself by the productivity it returns to its users. And yes, of course we can help, because like that's why we're here. We're here to talk about our Dell Technology Advisors, and our Dell Technology Advisors it's a free service that we can link you into. We're going to provide you the details at the end, but one of the services that we can sort of show you in that is our financial services. Because what it's about enabling you to be able to afford today's technology, in fact, tomorrow's technology today as well. So it's about providing a way to afford products with no upfront costs, to have maybe a different option, whether you want to lease or to own. There's different scenarios that we can do on that. And again, it doesn't matter how many devices you need. If it's just one device or up to 100 devices, we can fit the bill for small businesses to help spread the cost of that purchase. And in fact, we've had a webinar already on PC as a service or device as a service. And what that does, it actually bundles everything together. So literally from the actual device itself to the deployment, so actually receiving the device ready to go, to securing the device, so putting all the securities on board, which we've touched on again in previous webinars. It's about providing you with the whole package. So it's a bit like having your mobile phone contracts, if you like, where you just get everything and it works. And that's exactly what the sort of PC as a service is all about. And in fact, it goes right through to the full life cycle of the device as well, where it can be recycled at the end of the term, all for a fixed monthly cost per seat. So that's where we can help. So two options in a standard flat rate finance with some great rates down to like 1.7% or something, or a PC as a service sort of scenario where we can actually provide devices at about 87% of what it would actually cost you to buy them. So it's actually cheaper, and you're constantly having the latest and greatest devices available to you on a refresh cycle of 3 or 4 years. So yeah, we do that, and it's as I say, it's
you said do. I always like it when we do that. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, just wrapping up, we do have advisors that can help with all of this. We're quite good at advice, but these guys are the best because they know every single part of the platform that we have available, and they can give you a dedicated resource to be able to help you out as well. I'm going to ask in the chat here if there's any questions that are coming up. We are close to Q&A, so feel free to add them in just before we add Kasim back in. But anything else you wanted to add to our tech advisors, Andy? Because it's an interesting role, isn't it?
No, not at all, except it's free. Just remember that.
We like free.
It's free, and it's it's a first port of call if you don't know where to go, if you're a sole trader, or if you're a trader that's moving maybe to 2 or 3 employees. How do I scale out to that? Or if you're making that big leap into a larger solution, maybe you need to look at some infrastructure pieces as well.
Or if you get nagged with these questions, as Adrian probably does by his 100 tenants, where do you go for your tech? There's a simple way to get to that, and it just makes that, it takes the burden off your shoulders there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So I think we're Kasim back in the room, and just in case, because I know that some questions go directly to him through the chat panel, we don't get to see those. We're just guests. And hopefully he can bring in any of that, and we'll try and answer it if possible.
Yeah. Well, guys, that was really insightful. Thank you very much. So in terms of questions, we haven't got a great deal. I think people are quite interested in some of the things you were talking about, in terms of there's only so much size you can decrease in when it comes to a laptop, and, power over size and battery life, but 36 hours one of you mentioned?
That was Andy. You mentioned that
over 30 hours, on our premium laptops.
Wow, over 30 hours. So that could get me to Australia on a full trip then.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've done that. I look forward to doing it again at some point. Usually via Dubai for me, which is quite a nice stop as well.
Yeah. So one of the questions we have got is it's not clear, but it's asking which is the best PC for i9 processor.
Oh, that's very interesting. And actually, you know what? It's one of those things that hasn't got a simple answer, because again, it's about what you want to do with it. Now, the processor can go, that i9 processor can go into, well, actually, I've got one somewhere. I've got an Alienware gaming rig at the moment. I might be able to even sort of slightly bring that up at the side here. So I've got an i9 inside that. Fantastic. But it's what you're going to do with the PC that counts again. Because I can have an i9 in an Alienware, I can have an i9 actually in some of our Inspiron gaming products, or I can have it in Precision. What we talked about earlier is what software applications you're working with, what is the importance about the reliability, the support that goes along with that. Sometimes you'd be able to pick up an i9 processor in a system and go, just pick it up off the shelf. Again, it's back to that retail story and go, that's wonderful. I just wanted it because I had an i9 in it. That is unfortunate in a lot of ways, because that's a messaging that people get in their head, is that the biggest number is best. There are many different variants within these processors as to what is the best for you. And it's all about a balance, because a processor is one thing. If you have a lovely i9 processor and a 13-inch screen and 4 gig of memory, that's not a great balance. Let's dial down the processor. Let's go i5 and above is good in workstation. i3 I tend to avoid because of the amount of cores it works on. And then look at a nice 16 gig of RAM is nice there. So it's not all about the processor. Buying a PC is not processor driven. I've got some wonderful PCs, but high-end processors. But if you don't have everything else that backs it up, then your budget is maybe constrained. Bring down the processor level, ramp up the memory, ramp up the graphics card, which is equally forgotten by people far too easily, because my wife actually has a lovely high-end processor machine with 16 gig of RAM and no graphics card, and she's a graphic designer. I will not tell you her organization, but she's sitting there laughing at the moment. I'm surprised it's not coming over in the audio. But yeah, it's not all about the processor. So, and also picking out of those, to answer that, it's
I think
going out
that's
to do more
the key
research.
there is to that individual's one question then is if I'm going to go for an i9 processor, what else do I need with it to make sure I'm getting the maximum output?
Yeah, so it is all about the hand in hand. So the reason I bring it into budget is because the higher end the processor, the more expensive naturally, but unless it's supported by its surroundings that go with there. And if I'm thinking, it depends on what their organization is doing, but sometimes you might want to switch from an i9 to a Xeon processor, which is the more calibrated, works with the error correcting memory, and the cost difference is negligible between the two.
Okay, fabulous. So I've got another question now, which is one I think you're going to really enjoy. So we are a media company. We are having to pivot our business and do a lot more of the creative work ourselves rather than outsource it to specific designers to do things. I hate Macs. Apparently, this is the person speaking.
There's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah, everyone in the creative sector is using Apple Macs. How what's the difference? Why is everyone using Macs over PCs to do creative design?
Yeah, I don't know if you know the answer, Andy, but it's a traditional this thing. In fact, I might even shout, Lindsay, do you want to come over? I'm not going to do that to her because that'd be picking her spot. So my wife is a designer. She's right next door. And in fact, she isn't using a Mac. Strangely, she isn't using a Dell, but we'll cause them trouble for that because she hasn't got the graphics card. But it's traditionally the software, a lot of it was developed as Mac exclusive. They are what you call slightly proprietary. Now that changed back a few years ago when Mac started using a lot of the standard-based processors. So it's back to the processor thing again, where they started using Intel and adding that into their platform. That point, there was a change in some of the software vendors, and some of the software vendors said, look, brilliant, we're now going to be multi-platform because we've shaken our ties as it is. Dell has always traditionally been non-proprietary, and that's why Andy said we like Macs, because we do, because we know that some places do have Mac devices in them as well, so much so that now our displays and our docking stations have certification to be Mac compatible, because we know it's not simple and we know it's not easy, so you might get those into play as well. But as far as devices are concerned, they did always look the shiniest. They did always look the prettiest. You like the design. I know Andy's a design guy. When he looks at something, he likes the shiny. Tell us about why you liked them then, Andy.
Well, no, I mean it was we were functional and productive, and the Macs were just in a different arena. So that is where the XPS story came along. It was there to catch up and bring this great design element into our portfolio. In fact, year on year, I think for the last 3 years at CES, which is the largest, obviously, end user show in the world, the XPS 13 has won the best in class product over and above all its competition.
In fact, I think we'll probably share that story actually when it comes to a future call that we're doing, where we'll be actually focusing on the XPS product a little bit later on. I can't remember which date that session is.
But 2 weeks.
It's 2 weeks. Oh, brilliant. It's coming soon. So feel free to join that, and we'll actually talk a little bit about that. What we like to call it is style over substance, because originally it was all about the style, the look, the feel, the aspirational, and having something in your hands. And at that point, it was a very expensive item, and it was the look and feel was kicking out more than anything. And in a design studio, what do you want your customers to see? You don't want to be working with a pile of towers, a pile of rack mounts, and taking up your desks with a cumbersome, maybe not the prettiest of laptops. So we had to kind of follow suit, and that's where today's call, when we took that design from the XPS for the precision, that's what motivated us to it, and that's what we love. We love competition, because if there's no competition, then you don't create, you don't come up with something new and exciting to work with it. But as far as platforms are concerned, to answer that question, it's not the same problem anymore. You don't need a Mac to do a particular role like that.
In fact, we work with quite a lot of media organizations. So Frameworks, for example, a lot of the big CGI movies are actually rendered and developed on Dell Precision workstations. So we could reel off an entire list of movies that
I think the fun one is always my favorite. It's a bit of an older one now, but it was Gravity with George Clooney and Sandra Bullock, and the only two real things are their faces. Basically, the spacesuits, everything in the film is all created on a workstation. It's just amazing what you can do now. Oh, here we go. So, Rob, Moore's forecast law, or Moore's law. Yeah, I know Moore's law was announced in 1965. How COVID affected Dell's R&D, and do you have any insight to its future computing capabilities? Like wetware computing, right? Wetware, I'll have to go and do a Google, because that's not my best bet. But however, yes, has it caused us major change? Of course it has, because we went as an organization basically from being 30,000 of our workers actually worked from home already. But that's because we're a technology company, so we should be using that kind of stuff. But another 70,000 of those came into play basically overnight because of COVID. There's obviously some that were needed for essentials to keep hardware and things like that running. So as far as the motivation to get further ahead in technology, organic computing, I like this. We're going cyberdyne systems here. I'm loving it. Andy, do you have anything of where did you Google it?
I think I might be in a different job role if I could answer that question. So
yeah, probably.
Fortunately, we will take it back with us, and we'll get you an answer if possible. But thanks for the question, Rob.
Yeah, but I think that actually Rob is actually right. There always will be things that are looked at like that. The last biggest technology when it started getting used that I saw a change was into holographic technology, where we were using holographic data storage. And that was our biggest last jump. In fact, the last time that happened was actually at the last crisis back in 2007, when we had a financial change in the world. Wasn't quite as challenged, and before that 2001, obviously, which is a strange year for things to change, but we obviously know the reasons for all that behind as well. But yeah, I think there will be some stuff coming up in that. Am I in the position to know it? They don't let me in the room. And
No way,
I'm
no.
serious about that. There is a great R&D department in Dell, and we went to it in Limerick just last year, back when we could travel. There's a couple of rooms we're not allowed in. It's just like, sorry guys, it's above your pay grade.
Yeah, and so a lot of the stuff where we're at now, it's all about predictive monitoring, and it's about resolving problems and being at the forefront before things happen. So that's, it's more about AI and machine learning. That's about as far as we've as our knowledge and availability goes.
It probably is. I think the last time I dealt with wetware was actually, those clocks that you power off of an orange. That was about it. That's as close as it got to it. And it went
that's an interesting subject, though. Yeah, an interesting subject. And thanks, David. You're going to cause me hours of Googling now. So it's appreciated for that.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay.
Anything else, Kasim, before we...
Yeah, so this is another interesting one. So, got an office of 5 members of staff, and we usually have double screens, big wide screens. And he's saying, he's looking at the extra wide screens and asking, how do they set them up as split screens, or would you still go for the split screen?
Wow, do we
2
have a
separate screens as opposed
session in
to
this, Andy?
a
No, we
big
don't.
screen
So
with a
if
split?
I just
let's cover it then. Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll continue talking. I'm sure Jason's just going to go and find a quick bit of real estate just to show you, maybe.
I'll try and find something. Yeah.
So in fact, I've got one at the moment. So we have something called an ultra wide, and our ultra wide monitors go in, I think, what we got, a 49, and a 37, and a 34. So we've got 3 different flavors. Now what they do is they equate to 2 full HD displays in corresponding formats, if you like. So the 49, for example, is equivalent to 227 inches side by side. Now what it does, it gives you a piece of real estate that is absolutely borderless. So we don't have any interruptions. We don't have any seams down the middle of our screen. So if we're doing large data sets, for example, we can concentrate on the data set and have it across a massive real estate there. However, if we want to have something in different windows, we have the capability to, let me just come out of mine for you, Mr. Crawford. There, we've got a picture of it there.
Is it going up because your one's still there? There we go.
There we go. There's the 49.
The widescreen.
Yep. Okay, and I was just about getting to the point about our. Let me just close mine down.
I'll share it again just in case there was a little bit of fun when you've got. I have so many windows in front of me at the moment that it almost causes me a challenge to know which one I'm looking at.
Yeah, and so it's a good question, because I've got 6 windows sat in front of me as well at the moment. So yeah. What we've got a really cool piece of software that will divide this screen up into as many windows in different orientations and formats as you could possibly envisage. Here it is. It's called the Dell Display Manager. What it will do, it will enable us to divide any of our monitors. It doesn't matter whether it's a widescreen or a single monitor. And we can just split it. As you can see, there's lots of pre-configured splits on there, and that's what we're using personally at the moment, so we can have different things going on.
That's what I'm using at the moment.
Yep.
So I have 4 windows up in front of me at the moment, and to sort of reveal the sort of wizard's lab of what things going on here, I have an outside broadcasting software, which is what creates these graphics at the corner. I have PowerPoint up to the right. I have yourselves just down here. And then I have all my files that Andy was like, oh, can you go and rush and grab that? It is easy enough to work with a larger format screen and treat it like it's multiple monitors. The secondary question to that is, are you using multiple devices in those monitors? So normally you would say, oh, that's great, but I want to use another one device in one and one in the other. Now our monitors are also multi-client at this level. So this is a multi-client 49-inch, which basically means I can use 4 different devices plugged into it with to an HD output in each corner. So effectively, I'm getting 4 full HD screens from different machines. So a lot of IT management, people that are looking after infrastructure, just love that. People that are doing film rushes and edits in media, also a good reason to do that, because you might be working with audio software that you've got rushes in one place. You might be working with the video content and working with multiple things at time or multiple feeds. So there's a lot of reason to go towards that. The other reason is tidy, because you can start to get to seamless cables as well. But in fact, Andy, I think was about to say that.
I was going to say, yeah. So one of the massive advantages over a single large widescreen is the fact that one single cable to power and one single cable in to distribute the signal, if you like. Now that on the widescreens is all USB-C as well. So in theory, I could just have a USB-C cable out of my monitor, plug it into the power cable. The USB will go into my USB-C will go into my laptop. It will also power my laptop because it has power pass through. So I don't even need to charge my laptop. It charges from the monitor. As long as
that's a really good question. Actually, I didn't expect that, but I managed to find something to show you.
Yeah.
Well, I've learned quite a bit from that one as well, because I was looking at this whole split screening, and shall I get 2 screens? Shall I get 1 screen and have a split in the middle, as you've shown on that picture there? That's actually quite interesting, because you're investing in one big screen, which you can use as a single screen or split it into 2 separate screens. And sometimes when you have got those lengthy spreadsheets with hundreds of columns, it really does benefit to have something as wide as that to really see the full breadth of the spreadsheet and what's involved in it. So I think for data guys, that's really important, because they can see so many different fields and understand the full spreadsheet, as opposed to having to freeze panes and do other stuff, which is quite difficult when you're trying to look and analyze so many different things.
You're absolutely right. It's actually why this monitor shows all this financial data. This monitor was created for financial houses who are monitoring a lot of data. In fact, Andy and I have been to visit a couple in London, some of the bigger banks, and that's exactly the kind of tech they use. In fact, some of them, to be a bit geeky on it, actually stack these monitors. That's where it gets crazy. And we did actually have to provide a monitor mount for those organizations that can actually stack up to 3 or more of those monitors above. Imagine sitting at a desk like that. It's a bit like we're back in Top of the Pops in the 80s.
Well, it does remind me of back in early sort of 2000s, when Macs were starting to come out, but people were still using PCs and Coral Draw. I don't know if you remember Coral Draw, but I remember some of our designers using Coral Draw, and I remember this guy, he had sort of monitors stacked on top of each other. You looked like you was walking into a control center of a nuclear bomb. It was literally so many different things happening. So it's great to see how we've moved on, and all the different things that are now available, especially with the Dell technology that's in there to sort of split the screen into so many different ways. And I think that the most interesting thing I'm finding is this whole idea that you can have multiple machines plugged into one screen. I think that's really, really interesting. So, James, who asked that question, I hope that's really useful for you. In terms of any further questions, so let's have a look at another question. Okay, so looking for sort of your budget. I know today's mainly about the high-end products, and I've seen this question. I know budget's not sort of what we're talking about today, but if you're talking, I think what they're saying is they are a training organization. A guy called Ben runs a training organization in the Midlands and is looking for budget laptops for assessments. So where they've got people coming in and they just need to give them a laptop to do an online assessment. Have you got anything that you can offer them?
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because I think there's probably a question that's attached to that what are you assessing the person on? Is it just a questionnaire or a poll? So just in case that comes in just now as an in-feed, because to me, assessments and training, I've been a trainer for now 20 odd years or so, and assessments can mean different things. It could mean if you were being assessed, like today's calls about obviously the more high-end systems, if you're being assessed on a Photoshop application or 3D Studio, obviously you would want a workstation. But if it's just multiple choice questions and entry stuff, any of the lower end latitude systems is more than capable. In fact, pretty much every Dell product, if it's just a simple multiple choice and a survey monkey or whatever, there isn't a system in our range right from the bottom up that wouldn't be able to handle that at a basic level.
Exactly.
If it's something more complex, then we can ask that question, and then maybe he'll come in the chat and chime in with that and say, actually, it's something a little bit more complex, because it depends on the people using the systems in the day-to-day. If they're working with them day-to-day and they're having to do other things that are out with the assessment, then we start to go up the scale a little bit.
And I'll just interject slightly, because that's why we've got the Dell Technology advisors. It's a really simple thing to do. Is you pick up the phone, give them a call, tell them what you want to do, and they'll match the product. Now, you know, this is pretty much what we do day in, day out with organizations anyway. I mean, as a general idea for what he's sort of talking about there, I would even look at Chromebook, because Chromebook would do exactly what he wants on the sort of the really at the bottom. And that's where we'd sort of be looking at education. Education would be looking at having a device that can do the day-to-day tasks. So the general day-to-day would be virtual via Chromebook, and then if they were doing, like Jason has said, the design engineering department within education, well, we'd need some more performance. So that's what we've been talking about today. There are certain users, we call it workforce transformation. We talk about different user types. So it's the type of user that dictates the device. Then last week, what we did keep talking about is not all laptops are the same. So if you have got an organization, then you buy 10 laptops because you went and bought them from PC World because they were a cheap option. If one or two of those go down, they have to be serviced. They have to go back to return to base. And that's really crucial that you remember that if there is an issue, we have support services in place that will get you up and running with zero downtime by providing next business day support. So there's lots of different things to look at when we talk about best value. It's about how much time do we lose if that best value goes wrong. Buy once, buy right, and that's pretty much where we'd like to for people to understand. And that's, I say, where the tech advisors come in for you.
Oh, you've stolen their job.
I know. We ought to be one, really. In fact, we could do it as a sideline, I think.
I think that's a crucial point you make there. I think, you know, a lot of businesses do waste a lot of money in downtime when things aren't working, because they've gone for the cheaper option of tech rather than investing that extra money on the extra services that you can get. Especially, you know, as it looks like, you know, I think in the initial question he was looking for 100 laptops for assessments. I assume it's probably, you know, basic educational assessments. But you know, if you've booked an exam in, you've got 100 people turning up to do an exam, and you haven't got the tech to support it, that's costing you money that, you know, your business is suffering as a result of it. So, you know, really interesting points there, and I think, you know, really valid points in terms of how people should look at purchasing tech. You know, it's not just about buy cheap. You know, you've got to buy something that's going to be reliable, something that you're going to have the I mean, it comes back to Apple as well, doesn't it? I remember in the early days of Apple, you could literally walk into an Apple store with your device and they'll give you a brand new one straight away, because they wanted to keep your customer. I'm not sure they're that nice anymore. I haven't been for a while, but I remember that was the thing, wasn't it? You know, you had an Apple device. If the Genius Bar couldn't fix it there and then, you would take it in and they would replace it for you there and then. So you had zero time without your machine, basically.
And that's, you know, you're exactly right. It falls in the same way. I mean, to give you an insight, my history, I was the support technician in Dell 15 years ago. So I was the person that you phoned to go, can I have a solve my system? And it was, it was just me. I covered everything. But no, if it took 20 minutes or it took 3 hours, it didn't matter. We weren't driven by call targets to solve the problem. It was, let's get it right first time rather than having so many phone calls, because then a customer's time is valuable and maybe they can't phone back tomorrow again as we keep trying steps. Instead, solve the steps through to resolution in one call was always the preference, rather than me feeling like I need to rush to support somebody else. There's a backup of the rest of the team to do that.
Yeah, I think the two things I always look at is how much is my cost per hour? And if I was losing an hour or 2 hours or a day, how much does that cost? So that's how much I should have spent extra. Or if I've not been able to, I've lost a customer, or a customer has had a query that I've lost that business, that's another cost that I should have really thought about before I invested in technology, to make sure that I got the right technology in the first place. Yeah. So when we do work out how much our time costs, which is, there we go again, time, the most valuable commodity we have. Yeah. If we work it out, it's obviously beneficial to get it right first time.
Right, guys, I think that is it for today. I haven't got any more questions. Are there any closing comments you want to make?
No, I'm just thanks for turning up, everyone. It's really nice and some great questions there. And I've learned from Rob about wetware. There's my research question for today.
Yeah,
I'm going to be finding out about cyber systems and stuff like that. It'll be all good.
It will, yeah, indeed.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and hopefully you can tune into. We've got some more webinars coming up with Dell, haven't we? Do you want to just quickly tell everyone what they're going to be about and what they can find out more about?
Well, one of them in 2 weeks, as Andy's mentions, the XPS. I have no clue what's next week. It's so busy. What's happening, Andy?
Bless you. No, so next week we're going to be looking at deploying into an office or smaller environments where we're looking at maybe fixed workstations and the ecosystem that goes behind fixed workstations. So we're taking our journey away from the high-end mobility to the specialist mobility, and we're winding it into this fixed workstation or fixed desktop location, and we're going to show you some of those fixed desktop options and how they've advanced over the years. And we'll probably be diving a little bit more into the ecosystem. So the monitors and everything that we've been talking about today, we'll be going much more into that as well.
Brilliant. Well, thanks a lot, guys, and see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Kasim.